Hi everybody, and welcome to our very first review of color theory. And throughout this class I'll be posting these video critiques, and I like to do them the day after the deadline, so you can always sort of check back the next day for feedback. And so before we get started just talking about this, I wanted to mention one thing regarding the classroom. Let me just go into the classroom real quick. So this top area may look a wee bit different from yours, like I have instructor tools and you won't. But one area that we share is the help area, which is at the top of the classroom. And there's some really good help areas in there. So if we go in there, this one here, AI Online Help, takes us into a whole series of areas. And I just wanted to quickly go over them so you know what they are. The first one is called Thinking Storm, which I think I've mentioned in my first post in this thread. And it's called Thinking Storm, and it's a live tutoring service that's free to students. And this is, I think, really helpful if you have software issues, or not just even an issue, you just want some help on a certain step. And they're familiar with the assignments. You can just click here, and typically somebody will see you pretty quickly, and you can see all of the different design software. Essentially everything that we teach here is they have somebody that can help you in a tutoring session, and you can also make appointments, but you can just go in here and just see somebody pretty much right away. And the benefit of this is that they can actually see your screen. So they can actually see what's on your computer screen, like including your software, and they can help with settings and things like that. So take advantage of them throughout the session. And online library, I don't think we'll need to use that for this class. And help forum, technical support. This is the one I wanted to focus on too, which is that our technical support help desk. They're like any issues you have with the classroom proper. Like, for example, downloading files, which I know comes up sometimes. You know, we've got all these different files to download, or just accessing various videos, or anything in the classroom. Regarding downloading files, sometimes what I've tried doing is just trying a different browser. So if you're using Chrome, maybe try Firefox, or if you're trying Firefox, try Chrome, or IE Explorer, whatever there you have and you can access, because that sometimes can really help. But if that doesn't, then again, check out technical support. Finally, we have access to something called lynda.com, which is, if we click into it, I'm not going to do that now because it'll take me away from the site, but it's a huge library of resources, of classes essentially, that you have access to free, everything that they have. So for example, you can take like an Illustrator class, like a beginner Illustrator class from them. And I know we are learning Illustrator in this class through the tutorials in the color assignments. But if you want to go beyond that, you can check them out, or Photoshop, or even just basic design skills. You can just check around there, and there's really wonderful things within the lynda.com. And I'll just say, it is a professional type of teaching environment, in the sense that people who are professionals go to this website to learn different skills, to upgrade. I go there all the time when there's a new release of any software to find out what's new, or to learn a new software I don't know. So it's not like it's really the best of the best in terms of like software training, things like that. And let's see. I don't know too much about Pluralsight. That could be kind of valuable for other classes. It's not something I do with in terms of my background, but that would be something to check out too if you're in that area. Okay, that's all I wanted to mention, just because this is our first critique. And if you have any questions about any of these resources, feel free to drop me an email. Okay, so this assignment is our first assignment, and I think it's a really important assignment because it introduces us to maybe 6 different new terms, and some of these terms you probably heard before, maybe in the correct usage, and sometimes not. So by the end of this particular assignment, you'll know more than most people do about color. It happens fast. But there are three things that are called the properties of color, and they're called hue, which is the color itself. So we've got pink, green, orange, those are all hues. And then we have value, which is the lightness or darkness of a color, right? Lighter is a light value, or if we go darker, that's a dark value. Maybe something in between is like a mid-tone value or mid-value. So that's value, lightness or darkness. So we have hue, which is the color itself, the name of the color, value, which is lightness or darkness, and then something called saturation, which is the third property of color, which is where we get into all these wonderful tones. So everything in the tones, these are all tones in here, these bottom three rows. That's where you're actually sort of graying out the color or making it less powerful. Because a desaturated color is a weaker color, whereas a saturated color is more intense. It's kind of more pigment. If you imagine a bucket of paint, it's got more paint in it, whereas the toned out ones maybe have less color in it. You know, they're more grayed out. And then the other three terms are tints, tones, and shades, you know, which we're learning about. And I think that these particular terms, if you learn these, I'll try to, throughout this class, tell you the terms that I think are really going to be useful for when you leave this class, because there's a lot of other information in this class which is really good, but I'm going to try to point out the key things that I think will make you you understand color and also sound like a professional. And hue, value, and saturation are the three, and you'll find they come up in software all the time as well. And like if we go to software, you know, anywhere in the software, we're going to see hue, value, and saturation appear. So those terms are really useful to know. Tints, tones, and shades, those are the ones that people are always, you know, people who haven't studied color, or even who have, mix up these terms a lot. So tints, tones, and shades, they're different things. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Okay, so that's all I want to say now as an intro. It's a bit longer than I wanted, but in the first video critique, it's always a few things to get to know. So let's get looking at everybody's work and oh, you know, so, well, let's just get started and I'll say a few more words about this. Okay, Vanessa. Yeah, so, yeah, I love the color that you've chosen. It's really pretty, and you're right, it has kind of a seafoam quality to it. And the interesting thing about this exercise is that we're taking one color. In fact, so I'm going to take the eyedropper tool, you'll see me use it a lot, and just click on this very first swatch. And if I go immediately to the color picker, and you can do this in Illustrator or Photoshop, I'm in Photoshop right now, you'll notice that it will show you, right here's the hue bar, right here. So all the different hues, you can just slide along here, but it will tell you where in the tints, tones, and shades your particular swatch is residing. And so in this case, the upper right-hand corner is actually our most saturated color. And that's exactly where you have it, and that's what you want to have here for your very first swatch. You want it all the same, and you want it in the most highly saturated. Then our tints go right across here, which is great. You can see it's going across. That looks great. And it's kind of switched a little bit here. That I think it's okay. Sometimes it will look a little, sometimes it might not be where you had it. Sometimes when you save a digital design in a JPEG, it can sometimes shift a tiny bit. So it's still cool, so I think that's okay. So tints just roll along this top. Notice that, so this is the tints. Now let's go down the shades, and then what we're doing is we're just going to go straight down this line right here. So you can see, here we go. That looks good. Oops. Now, so this last swatch right here, this is where you want to make sure this last swatch is changed to your color, because this is the default color from the original template. It's red. And even though in this particular instance we can't really tell too much of a difference here, in a lot of instances, when you even when you have a tint so white is actually a tint, black is actually a shade, you know. So when we get there, if you go to the paint store, somebody mentioned the paint store on the thread. If you go to the paint store and you look at all the different whites, you'll start seeing when you compare them that they have, you know, that one white has an underlying hue to it. So it's actually a tint. So you want to change this last one here. The other thing I might do is actually also even the swatches out just a wee bit to make it more like these swatches right here look pretty similar. So, you know, what you might want to do is lessen the amount of change in here. Because when you get to here, right in here, you know, sometimes, you know, you need to, you can't have the same equal amount of steps, you know. So I might even do that in here a little bit too, is maybe have the step be a little more here. I don't know, I think this one's a little more even, so I might, you know, work with that one a little bit more. Tones progressing to a lighter value here. So in this one you want to actually be working along an angle like this, okay, in the color picker. So it's actually going to progress towards the gray, because this whole, so this is tint, and then this line is shade, and technically speaking, everything within here, this whole area here, is a tone, because it's a mixture of black and white. So you want to kind of angle this down. So sometimes you have to play with this, but you sort of want to start and just kind of try to make a nice diagonal line, play with it a bit, and end up maybe somewhere there. It's going to be lighter, so I'd work on that one. Tones progressing to a lighter value, or pardon me, to a darker value. So in this one, yeah, so you're starting here. It looks like your hue might have changed a little bit here. So I'll show you the trick of how to keep it even. So right in here, okay, so we're clicking on our first swatch. If we look down here, there's actually a little section in here. This refers to hue right here called 100, and it's 168. So if you keep an eye on this, you can manually adjust this. So now you can see it's 176, so it's shifted a little bit, and we can see that here. It's kind of gotten a little bluer. So you can, as you work, you can change this back, because sometimes it kind of slips on its own. You know, I don't know why it does that, but it's just one of the things. So if you look at that, you can keep it nice and even. And then you want to go just like you went, you know, you took this direction for the tints progressing to a lighter value. For tints, or pardon me, I should say tones progressing to a lighter value. For tones progressing to a darker value, you're going to have to kind of go down this way. You know, you can sort of see, you can see this swatch right here where we start, and you can see here's the starting one, and we're going to go downwards. So you want to make sure that goes down. And then this is actually pretty good here, I think, in terms of maintaining a constant value. I think maybe it could be a tiny bit lighter here at the end, but you can, if you squint your eyes, you know, look at your design on your monitor, your computer screen, and squint your eyes. That kind of helps you see the value, because somehow, I don't know, it's like a trick we learned back in design school where it seems to kind of reduce the color, because the color perception gets in the way of seeing the value. And if I do that, it looks like this is a bit darker, so you may want to go a little lighter. So right now it's, you know, somewhere there. Maybe you could go up to about here. Make sure you change this to that green color here as well. You know, so let's see, 160, was it 168? Somewhere around there. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Keep listening to maybe the rest of the critiques. We'll, you know, take a look at everybody else's, and that can give you some useful information. But I would just revise based upon what I talked about today. So let me know if you have any questions. Okay, Kristen, yeah, it's great to always work with colors you like. And it's true, this orange color does remind me of fall as well. One of the things I want everybody to notice is how different, even though, so this color, if you look at it, we did just the same thing as we did in the previous series of swatches. And we see, hey, look, this is maximum saturation. But if you look at the previous exercise, if you just go back in the video, you'll notice that the hue there looks a little more saturated. It looks brighter. And that's because every color sort of has a slightly different appearance of being fully saturated. Some colors look a little more saturated, even at, at maximum saturation than other colors do. So they're all, again, a little bit different. Let's see, so this looks good. Yeah, very nice. This last swatch, I would just make sure, it looks pretty much like, it actually does look, when I look at it, it looks like it belongs pretty well until we like look at it a little closer. And the reason why is because it's a warm color. And even though, you know, it's not orange, you know, this underlying hue here, which you do want it to be orange, like this color here, your hue, your 28. Yeah, great. That I'm glad you noticed that 28. It still is a little bit different. So I would adjust that. I think that's the main thing here. And in this one right here, this looks good. Yes, very nice. And just change that one as well. Tones progressing to a lighter value. Yeah, that looks really good. Yeah, so exactly. So you're kind of rolling along, you know, the top of the tones. And I would just maybe adjust that if you can. Again, you know, sometimes, as I mentioned before, sometimes, you know, when you get desaturated, sometimes the hues will shift a little bit, but I think this, you just probably want to move it back to your original hue here, your 28. Tones progressing to it. Now notice here, folks, how even though, notice the difference here between tones progressing to a darker value and shades. Even though there's a lot in common, you know, we're going from this color and we appear to be losing a little bit of the orange and we're getting darker. Notice how there's sort of a different quality to the shades, which are just black, addition of black, to the addition of black and white. So even though it's dark, it's murkier, more desaturated, more kind of faded looking. You know, the color, so if you look at this color here, notice how this looks more saturated than this one. You see that? It's more kind of intense, and this one's a little more muted. Muted is a good term for it, or kind of, you know, more washed out, you could say. And tones maintaining a constant value. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Yeah. Let's see here. Go back to our color picker. And yeah, good. Yeah, good. So we just changed that last swatch. So, okay, that's it. So just some very minor changes here, I think, with our the last color here. And last swatch, I should say. And then you're done. Okay, Brittany, yeah, I love the bright pink. That looks really good. You can tell right away that it's very saturated. And I think your tints look really good. I would just double check this last swatch right there. And it looks to me like your shades look good. Maybe just change that. I think just tones progressing to a lighter value. That looks good. Just change that last guy. But yeah, this is definitely on track here of going lighter. And this looks good here. Tones progressing to a darker value. Just change that one. And maintaining a constant value. Yeah, I think that looks really good. Yeah, you know, another trick I'll just show you here. You know, this last one, this one's always a little, all of these three are a little bit, you know, challenging. You've got to really kind of look at the value. But what you can do here is I'm going to go in Photoshop, and I'm just going to go to, I apologize, this is above the video screen, but what I'm doing, and I think that you can do this in Illustrator too, is I'm going up to Image and Mode, Image Mode, and I'm going to choose Grayscale. In fact, let me just let me adjust the screen so we can see that. Okay, here we can take a look at the menus here. So there's different ways of doing this, but you can just go to Image Mode Grayscale. And I'm going to just do this just to test it, and then I'm going to undo what I've done. But you can see, look at that. So you can see the shades getting darker, tones progressing to a lighter value, going darker, and look how great that looks here. Tones maintaining a constant value. It's like just, you wouldn't even know that it's, there's a color behind it. It looks like a perfect, a constant value. So excellent job with that. So yeah, it looks to me like just your last swatch here. Question, yes, I agree with you that just knowing, I think you get a lot of, there's a lot of power in knowing just this particular assignment in terms of taking this one color and seeing all of the variations that come out of that single color. You know, when you look now at anything, you know, in the world, any color, you can sort of start looking at it and kind of guessing, oh, that looks really saturated, or oh, that doesn't, that looks pretty muted, or that's a tone. It looks kind of got that bright quality that the tone, or pardon me, a tint, and the bright quality that the tints do, you know, because they have that kind of pure color underneath. You know, you can just really recognize all of those. And okay, so your first one is tints, and it's very neon, isn't it? Some of these colors, when they're saturated, they have that quality of being really neon. And this looks good to me. Yeah, you're going right across. Maybe just shift that last one. I might make this swatch right in here, just give it a little bit more color, like kind of slow down the progression. So maybe like this swatch could be right here, and then your final one could be just a wee bit lighter in the red tone, you know, to spread that across. This looks really good. I would, you know, just fix that last one. Oh, this is nice here, the way you're going across here. You may want to start, so with this one, you may want to start going down a little further, like take that line across, you know, at an angle, because if you stick close to the top, then technically what these all are tints, right? So you're getting a little, like here, we're getting a little bit into the tones, but you want to go a little bit quicker. So, you know, you could, if you want to make sure that it stays nice and light, make your angle, you know, quite gradual. Maybe you could end here, you know, which would work, because if we look at that, it's still going to be quite a lot lighter. This looks good here. Yeah, I can tell this is graying out. So instead of sort of curving the angle like you've done, you sort of it's sometimes better to kind of straighten it a little bit. I don't know. It actually, when I look at it, it looks. I don't know. Okay, so I think it looks okay. I would just change this last swatch to make sure that it is green. Pardon me, yeah, green, and then maybe spread out the changes. These swatches look a wee bit, you know, similar to each other, so to spread those changes out. And tones maintaining a constant value. Well, that's just now that we've learned the trick of changing it to grayscale. I might just go a little bit darker here, or pardon me, lighter here, and just a wee bit. This is, you know, this is so saturated. It has an intense. It has kind of a light value. The green does, so I might go a little bit lighter at the end and spread that out. All right, okay. I think you're going in a good direction, and just, you know, a few changes here. Isis, yes, exactly. This is really how they make that wall of colors, isn't it? It is really interesting to, you know, start really looking at colors just from an interior design perspective. You know, when you're at the paint store, and you know, I'm always fascinated because even knowing color theory and having a background in art, it's still always very challenging to find that, you know, color that you want in, you know, like let's say you want to paint one of your rooms in your home, like what color works. And there's so many, you know, varieties of colors out there at Lowe's, and like which one is going to make you happy and which one is going to look good. It really is quite an art. Okay, so you've got a nice sort of magenta color here. Looks good, nice and saturated. And oftentimes when we get towards the cooler colors in here, we notice that they might not look as saturated. This looks a little darker than maybe that green we looked at before, which is a little bit of a warmer color. Even though it's green, it had a lot of yellow in it. When we get into the purpley blues, they often look darker even though they are fully saturated. So let's just kind of go walk across here. This looks good. Yeah, that looks good. Just change that last swatch. That looks good here too. Just change that last swatch there. Tones progressing to a lighter value. Yeah, this looks good here. I would just change that last swatch. Same here. You can really see actually in here, you know, can you see how this gray looks a little different than this gray? You know, or I should really say tone, that this tone is a little bit of a different quality. That's because of the underlying hue. So even though before you might have just said, oh, that's a gray, now in this class you can start to really see, oh yeah, that's like a tone, and it does look just like a gray, but compared to this other gray, it does look different because the hue underneath is a little different. I would just, yeah, change that last swatch. And this looks good here. Just, I think your last swatch needs to be changed, and let's do the trick. because it's easier than squinting your eyes. That looks pretty good. You could, if you wanted to, you can see that it's getting a little darker. So if you wanted to, you could just take this guy right here and go maybe a little bit, wee bit darker, you know, once you adjust the purple. Okay, yeah, but I think, you know, you've got a good understanding of the different adjustments, you know, the different gradients. So just make those changes and you'll be in good shape. And yeah, there's a lot in this assignment that is really, really just so practical and helpful. And even the color tool, I think. In Illustrator and Photoshop, the color tool is pretty similar, and it is definitely really, you know, a useful thing to just know your way around. And this looks good, very saturated color, and so we're going across here. Nice job with the tints. And this is, you know, so this is actually the original red. Yours is like, if we look at it, it is just a wee bit, it's actually, so this is the original red, which is a little more orange, and yours is a little more cool. It's got a little bit more of a purpley red. So when you get to the shades here, it would be good to change them, but you would notice that you can't tell so much the difference between like the underlying hues here because they're so similar. Like I think you'd have to be like some kind of real, you know, like color genius to be able to perceive those. But still, just for the sake of this assignment, I would like you to change all of these last hues or last swatches here to your hue. And you can use that hue color here. You can see that yours is 351 and the template is 0. 0. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I might make this so this swatch here looks like it's a little, you know, you want to try as much as possible. I haven't been talking too much about this in the exercise with folks because, you know, most folks have like pretty even steps, and this is not bad, but if you want to, you could even this out a little bit more, you know, so it's not such a big step, you know, and maybe even make it like, you could make it a wee bit, just a wee bit darker so that you can see it against the background a little bit more. Shades look good, just, you know, your last swatch. Tones progressing to a lighter value, that looks good. You know, just that last swatch. Darker value, that looks really good. Again, you can really see the difference between the, you know, the shades here, which have much more of an intense saturated quality even when they get dark, as compared to the tones, which look much more muted. And tones progressing to constant value. Just change that last swatch. So I think we're on a theme here. Ooh, look, that looks really good. It's probably getting just the tiniest bit lighter, but really, I think it looks really good. So I would just change that last swatch. So just a few changes here. Okay, Robert. You know, Robert, I'm not sure if you received my email. I did send you the template. I haven't checked my email. Maybe you weren't able to download it out of the email either. If so, that would definitely be something to check in with tech support about, because our whole class is going to be run on templates. A lot of it, well, not all of it, but a lot of it. And so it's just going to, it's great that you put this together. And it's fine if you want to do that, but it'll save you some time if you can get those templates. Okay, so this looks great. Yeah, so all along the tints here, very nice. And then here we have the shades, which looks good. And tones, very nice here. And then tones here, or pardon me, tones that are getting darker. I'm not sure why that changed here. So again, I think that's the JPEG doing something funny. That looks good. And then tones maintaining a constant value. I think that it might be getting, well, it's getting a tiny bit darker. You could lighten that end just a little bit, just a little tiny bit here, like with your, you know, move it up just a bit, wee bit here, and see if that makes it more even, but it's pretty good. Okay, so overall, I think this looks really good. Okay, Delta, yes, you know, you really can see the importance, yes, of this exercise. Again, you know, this is really just such a useful one, and this looks all really good. I would just change again this last swatch here to make sure that it's, if you look at your hue number looks to be 350, so you'd want to change it to be 350 all the way across with these last swatches and replace the template. But otherwise, that looks really good. Yeah, tones regressing to a lighter value, darker value, tones maintaining constant value. That looks really good too. Let's just double check here, turn it black and white and see what it says. It seems to be, yeah, really good. Yeah, so it looks to me like everything's great except for just make sure to just adjust your last swatches to be your particular hue. Okay, everybody, I think everyone's off to a really good start, and I will see you in the next group critique, which is going to be on Monday.